Hey podcast listeners, this week my family is in town, so I'm taking a little extra time off, but I'm going to present two very special Asia Now episodes that still have relevance for the region, and I will be back next week with a regular Asia News Weekly. Hello everyone, I hope you're having a fantastic Friday. Of course, I'm your host, Steve Miller, and I'd like to thank you for listening and downloading this week's very special Asian News Weekly podcast. To begin this week's podcast, I'm going to present an interview I conducted on December 2nd, 2014 with Bruce Lui. He is a senior lecturer at Hong Kong Baptist University's School of Communication. We discussed the pro-democracy movement, and I began our conversation by asking him to describe the mood of the protest from its inception all the way up through the crackdowns that signaled the movement's end.
Yeah, in the very beginning, I think it is out of a lot of Hong Kong people expectation that we have such a mass movement, that we all come together and have such a huge crowd gather on the street. We didn't thought of occupy the main road in the very beginning, and a lot of people just think whether they will just sit in the somewhere near the government headquarters, or in the very preliminary plan as somewhere that is set as a special area for people for Sunday resting, outside the Charter Road. But on the day of the inception, we have a lot of people coming out, and we take that as a very good beginning, and think that it may create a huge pressure to Hong Kong government as well as Beijing. But later on, even we see we can occupy more and more area on the street, but we don't see any compromise from the government, and also we see more and more straight the stance of the Beijing government, even though there one-time meeting between the students and the government. But other than that, all the signals from Beijing is unchanged. And even they just give a message to Hong Kong people that Beijing can tolerate such occupy even for a longer time. And then when we see there is nothing really progress, some of the people really want to get some concrete promises from the government, but there is no answer for that. In that point, many Hong Kong people think that whether we still have to occupy on the street, or we have to move on to spread the message to fight for democracy through the community in a very long run. And in the clearance this few days, especially yesterday, we see that the government has accumulated quite a number of support to clear the streets. And after we see how the policeman is dedicated to clear the streets, many people now, they think it is time to withdraw from the occupied zone, as the court order will be issued and then carry out soon.
Some surveys have indicated that more than 80% of Hong Kong residents want protesters to clear the streets. Is that an accurate representation of those not protesting?
Yeah, I think, we have all kind of surveys. The one you quote, about 80% of the people think that the occupiers, the protesters on the street should withdraw soon. It is just a very general question. It is asking whether you agree the protester should withdraw from the street as soon as possible. It didn't state on any particular zone. If we always can see, if we make a general statement, people tend to support the general statement. And it didn't describe the degree of withdrawal, whether it is a fully withdrawal without any people on the street or just partly withdrawal. This question is ambiguous on that. So for a very general question asking the public, people tend to support it. And then this survey is done by a pro-establishment party, New People's Party, on the street on 1 week. So they just randomly asking people to do the questionnaire, and then it is not like a random telephone call to the people. It is someone on the street. If you see this is from the party, and some young people may not willing to do the questionnaire. But if you see, this is the kind of party I support, then you will go over them and then agree to do the questionnaire. So then if during the process they are doing the survey on the street with their logos on, their party logos on, if this is the case, then it may affect the accuracy of the outcome. And then it's for overall speaking, as the campaign has lasted for 2 months in Hong Kong, when you ask about the general feeling whether the people, the protesters, should withdraw from the street or decrease, minimize the Occupy zone, I think a lot of people will agree about that. Because we Hong Kong people, because it's such a crowd and then highly dense place, we can feel the different kind of inconvenience in terms of transport and then shopping. So when the longer it goes, I think the more people will agree the Occupy zone should be minimized, or the protesters should withdraw from the street.
And what about the pursuit of democracy? Are Hong Kongers ready to accept the Beijing model, or do they still want universal suffrage?
I think the basic stance of Hong Kong people is still the same. We really want a real democracy, and then once the democracy and universal suffrage to be done on with the consensus of Hong Kong people rather than on the Beijing model. Even we can have a way out from the Occupy campaign, but and a lot of disagreement about the weight of doing the campaign or the weight of dealing with Hong Kong government. But the basic principles of fighting for a real democracy, it is quite rooted in Hong Kong people's heart. And we take it as a longer term now, because for a lot of signals from Beijing and Hong Kong government, it seems that they won't really have any amendment on the decision made by the National People Congress. There are some voices, some balloons from the government now. One of the a government source I have is whether they're thinking whether they will put behind the consultation, the second phase consultation, and to put the 2017 chief executive election behind, and then we start to discuss it all over again. I've heard of one of the balloon released by the one of the government source, but they just want to test whether it is feasible or not.
A criticism of the movement has been that there seems to be no actionable plan to move the call for democracy forward. Benny Tai and other Occupy Central members are planning to turn themselves in on Friday, December 15th, and Lester Shum and Joshua Wong were both arrested and barred from returning to Mong Kok. And now, as you know, Mr. Wong is leading a hunger strike. Do the leaders know what their next step really is?
I don't think up to now there is really some workable plan to move the things forward to realize their original demands, such as the step down of CY Leung and the turnover of the NPC's decision. I don't think there will be something compromised by the Beijing government, and the leaders of the Occupy campaign and also from the student groups, they really want to have something to be done beautifully before they withdraw from the street and then return to the community. Hunger strike is something to keep the momentum of the campaign. But I think after the brutal clearance of the police, a lot of protesters on the street, they know that it is about time for them to go. The court order is approaching, and then the leaders are turning them to the police soon. And before the overall public opinion really turn against them, they want to still get the support and then to move the campaign to the community. So I think they are trying to do something beautifully before they end the streets protest. The one happened 2 days before surround the government headquarters is one of their efforts, although it is not a successful one. And then after this failure, it will make them a bit hesitate to step up for any other plans, and they are the groups, and then the protesters and the groups are having more and more disagreement. So the court order on MOT will be carried out, I think, maybe in 1 or 2 weeks' time. When it clears all the legal procedures, then it will be done no matter how. So on that occasion, I think it may be an inevitable time for the professors to withdraw.
Bruce Lui is a senior lecturer at Hong Kong Baptist University's School of Communication. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Next is an episode of Asia Now dating back to this summer. I traveled to Seoul's plastic surgery capital of Gangnam and spoke with physicians, getting their opinion on the controversial practice. According to the International Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgeons, nearly 15 million people received some form of plastic surgery per year as of 2011. The majority of these procedures fall into the non-invasive category, focusing on skin and hair treatments. The United States performs the most surgeries overall, but South Korea has the highest rate of occurrence per capita. Chris Lewis had this to say.
In most cases, I'm against plastic surgery. However, in the case that someone has something wrong with their face, something serious, or, for example, they just have a crooked nose and everyone at school teases them about it. Well, I don't think, those kinds of people need to live their entire life being teased for some flaw that they have. So in that situation, I think plastic surgery is necessary. I mean, they don't need to go their entire lives being teased. But, other than that, some people have nothing wrong with them. For example, they just have a typical Korean-style nose, and they just want a high-bridge Western-style nose. There's nothing wrong with their nose. So I don't know why people seek that. I guess it's the beauty standards for, celebrities here. And in a lot of cases, I think, people come out looking worse.
I also spoke with longtime listener Alex Oraka about her experience.
So when I was in high school, I got teased a lot for a certain way I looked. So when I went to college, I decided in my freshman year to get plastic surgery. It was more of a corrective surgery, and it made my life a lot easier, able to lose all this weight, and I stopped getting made fun of for certain aspects of my life. And then when I went to Korea and I saw that it was very popular to get surgery, or especially for parents to put a fund aside for their daughters to look a certain way. It was kind of sad to me that people weren't using surgery more as a corrective thing, but more of as a kind of like a peer pressure.
As you might expect, there are very different sides to this debate, some in favor and some not. I spoke with Jason Teal about how he changed his perception.
When I was working for a cafe in Vancouver, a lady came in. She was sort of, probably mid-40s, and primarily single. And then she decided to get, I think it was a boob job, if I remember correctly. And when she came in afterwards, she was just bursting with confidence. So that sort of changed my perspective on it.
To learn more about the big business of plastic surgery, I spent an afternoon in Gangnam, the heart of Korea's plastic surgery's booming business.
My name's Tony Medina, and I'm a kind of broker, so I help mostly international patients to come to Korea and perform plastic surgery, dental work, and skin clinics.
Now, I thought the notion of a broker was a bit strange, but Tony clarified.
Foreigners are difficult for companies and hospitals to handle. We take up a lot of time, and time is money. If a doctor in LA, for example, is performing 5 surgeries a week, here they could be performing 5 surgeries a day. So, for example, when a Korean comes to the clinic, they already know what they want. They've already researched everything well. They know the price. They know everything. They come in, they get a consultation, and they choose the service or not. But a foreigner comes in, requires several consultations, and needs the doctor's full attention for the entire time, which means that the doctor doesn't have enough time to go to other patients. The doctor needs to spend their full energy on one patient to get their work done quickly so they can leave and go back to their country.
So the service Tony provides helps to mitigate that. What do these meccas of plastic surgery look like? Well, I visited 3 separate offices, one specializing in oral corrective measures, an aesthetic clinic, and one that performs breast and other enhancements. I found all 3 to have quiet lobbies, soothing music, and magazines. Everything you'd expect and want from a professional medical center. The surgical facilities were well organized, as were the recovery rooms where patients could stay following their procedures and look down over the crowded streets of Gangnam.
Yeah, we are different in several points, but one thing I want to mention is we are using CAD/CAM system.
Dr. Bae-chol Min.
It means we can achieve our treatment goal in very short time. For patients who visit one day in Korea, we can provide that kind of restoration in short time.
South Korea, and specifically Seoul, has several affluent areas, but Gangnam is internationally known for its plastic surgery. I asked Dr. Choi Min why he chose this area for his clinic.
아무래도 여기가 성형의 이제
because Gangnam is kind of center of plastic surgery industry, and he lives really close to Gangnam.
Most of the money in Korea flows through Gangnam. And because of that, the people who could originally afford surgeries were the wealthy people, which meant that the clinics had to be in this area, in Apgujeong and Gangnam. Now services are much more affordable to the general public, but all top doctors want to gravitate towards Gangnam. If they're not in Gangnam, then they're not a top doctor.
South Korea has a reputation of being a society focused on superficial beauty, that what's on the outside matters more than what's on the inside. So I was curious about the clientele of these offices, just who are getting these treatments. Well, of course, this being Seoul, most of the clients were Korean. However, what was surprising was that depending on the type of treatment being offered, foreign clientele ranged between 5 and 40%. So why are so many people getting procedures? Dr. Lee Sung-hwan shares his thoughts.
아름다워지고 싶은 욕구는 누구에게나 있습니다. 하지만
Paraphrasing, some people have what Dr. E calls complexes. In short, they don't feel confident about the way they look. So these procedures are designed to help them feel better about themselves. Tony Medina.
I can't speak for everybody, right? But I'll give you my own personal take on it. When I was growing up, my nickname was Boney because I was so skinny. And everyone said, oh, you can't play sports and you're not good at sports because you're so skinny. So I thought, I need to change my body in order to become good at sports and for people to stop calling me bony. So I worked out, and I worked out really hard, and I didn't take any drugs, but I took protein and creatine and followed my diet, and my body changed. So what is the difference between changing my body through exercise or changing my teeth through braces or changing my nose through surgery? For me, there's no difference. I think we're humans and we want to become whatever we want to become.
In the end, cosmetic surgery is a personal choice. It really is no different than spending money on a personal trainer, getting a tattoo, or other forms of body modification. However, looking back to Dr. E's notion of surgery to increase self-confidence, it raises another issue. Have we created a society where we feel more comfortable berating others, crushing their self-esteem, just to make ourselves feel better? Thanks everyone for joining me this week. I hope you enjoyed these rebroadcasts of the Asia Now podcast. I'll return next week with a regular episode. You'll be able to keep up with more news from the region by following Asia News Weekly on Facebook and Twitter. You can also send an email to the show with your comments, your questions, and even your feedback. Just drop a line to podcast@asianewsweekly.net. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to this and other podcasts at asianewsweekly.net or in your favorite podcast application like iTunes or Stitcher. Subscribing is absolutely free, and when you do, that next episode is delivered automatically to you. I'll be back Monday with the Asia Brief, and until then, thank you so much for listening. Have a great day. I'm Steve Miller.